acknowledge and pay respect to those who have sacrificed their lives for this country and its people. We pray for understanding and guidance in our debate as we make decisions that will impact on the lives of all who reside, study, work in, or visit the city of Burnside. Grant us wisdom as we serve our community. Thank you. Please be seated. For observers in the gallery, I welcome members of the community to the gallery and ask you to observe in respectful silence as those in the chamber deliberate on matters that relate to the city of Burnside. Should there be a fire or any other emergency, the alarm will sound and you are asked to follow instructions of council staff. I remind you that all council meetings are live streamed through the council's website, and a copy of the agenda is available by downloading it from this website. I remind elected members to use their microphones appropriately so that those at home can hear the debate clearly. Finally, please turn off your mobile phones or switch them to silent. Thank you. We have an apology from Councillor Jones. We have no leave of absence. Could I have a motion to confirm the minutes, please? Councillor Henschke, seconded Councillor Dawes. All those in favour? Carried. We do have a deputation, and the deputation is from Mrs. Kate Bairstow. If Kate, would you like to come to the seat in front of you? And I'm not sure if you know or aware of the procedure, but I'll just go through it. You have 5 minutes to speak. There'll be a warning bell at 4 minutes to let you know you've got another minute to go. And if you wouldn't mind remaining in that seat for people to, any of the elected members to ask you any questions they have at the end, that would be appreciated as well. Thank you very much. I'll turn my mic off if you press the button that says speak, and it's off, over to you.
Thank you. Good evening to the Mayor and Councillors. My name is Kate Bairstow and I'd like to present this deputation to the Council. I represent the community of Beulah Park. We are a small suburb but have concerns for this small suburb. I have represented our community of our local streets, Verdun and Thornbury, for over 10 years. Through this, I have door-knocked, spoken to the community, heard their concerns, their thoughts and suggestions for Beulah Park. We have many elderly people on Verdun Street that have limited English. And I can tell you, after a few Italian coffees, I soon know what they're talking about. They're scared of the volume and the speed of traffic that is coming down our streets. I have the support of our community to speak tonight on their behalf. Of the bike boulevard on Beulah Road for the safety of riders and pedestrians. Increased cut-through traffic will make our quiet streets turn into major roads. Finally, the community of Beulah Park requests the Burnside Council to listen to the community's concerns and look into producing an effective traffic management plan, not only for the duration of the intersection upgrade, but also for the long-term future and security in Beulah Park. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Kate. Any questions, please? Councillor Hughes.
Thank you for coming in tonight. I just wondered whether you've had feedback from the residents around reducing the speed limit in the area and what their general feel is around that. To reduce the speed limit in the area?
Built a long time ago. The volume of traffic has increased. People feel very comfortable on a bus, but more comfortable in their car. People are wanting to get to work quicker or to university. Plus, we just generally have a larger volume of vehicles on the road.
So do you think that's why they're using the suburb as a cut-through, because they're just avoiding heavy traffic?
Yes, they're trying to avoid any intersection, whether it is the Portrush Road, McGill Road, whether it's the Parade and Portrush.
Oh, okay.
It's all of those small pockets where they're actually cutting through. And I've been in Verdun Street since about 1993. I originally was a renter and we bought the house that we live in now. And we've noticed over time the massive increase. Hence 10 years ago, when I tried to cross the road with my dogs and somebody indicated incorrectly and sped off and nearly hit me when I was 9 months pregnant, I thought, no, this has to stop. If I'm going to raise a child in this community, I want it to be safe.
Thank you. And my second question, if I may ask that, is often what happens when you do treatments?
So in April, we're going to look at particularly around the Portrush and McGill Road intersection upgrade and the likely impacts and measures that we can put in place to mitigate and manage that. I won't go into the various options now, but we're looking to present a broad range of options to try and deal with that. One of the things we have in regard for is this issue of if we address the matter in this particular location, we don't want to force it into another locale. So also in that report, whilst we may not have all the solutions, I'm going to talk about taking a holistic look at our city in terms of some of the road treatments that we might look at broadly across the city. I was interested to hear that speed humps aren't the solution. It needs to be other, perhaps more contemporary solutions. So I'll be sharing that with council in terms of, the need to invest in a holistic view, but whilst particularly examining the issue at hand right now, which is this intersection upgrade. So likely to be the second meeting in April. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Henschke.
Thank you. Look, I think that's pretty much answered all my questions, but thank you, Kathleen, for raising our awareness, and Councillor Davey as well for asking those questions, because it's a common theme, across the whole city of Burnside. Well, hopefully not too common a theme, but I notice it in the Rose Patrick Gardens ward, the Portrush Road intersections, and the Kensington and so forth, and those dreaded speed humps really just don't work. So old technology. Let's move on. So thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you for all your support.
Councillor Carbone.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question probably carries on from the CEO's report that's coming in late April. But I just wanted to ask you, Kathleen, because this is not my area, so you're the first resident I've met that lives in this street. So I wanted to ask you about the redevelopment. So it's obviously costing a lot of money. They're purchasing properties, so it's getting controversial. Okay, and I'd like to think that the silver lining amongst all this controversy is that it actually will help the traffic issue. Okay, that's the one thing that I'm hoping to achieve out of all this. Okay. So I'm keen to get your thoughts. So, I mean, you know the plan back to front. I've seen it in the paper, but I can't recall it exactly. Is all of this going to resolve your issue, or is it going to make it worse?
As we know, that's not going to happen, because we won't talk about that. I'll be here all night. But I think there is no solution to get. I can't see a solution of decreasing the traffic. Not everybody's going to leave their car at home, take a treadly, or go on a bus. The volume of traffic is always going to be there, but it's a matter of managing it so it actually doesn't slipstream through our streets and potentially hurt somebody. I mean, you think of a child, there's two cars, and they're between those cars waiting.
And if anyone's going to cut through, it's probably people going west along McGill, and then turning left onto Portrush.
Yes, that will happen, and that will increase because of the bottleneck traffic going back during
So is there a bottleneck on McGill Road going west?
I think there's a problem that's influencing all our streets in that suburb, okay? And it won't, people come from Glenburn Road and take all of Beulah Road down to cut through onto Beulah Road again on the other side. So that intersection, it is characterised in this now, but this has been...
It doesn't need to be done by 28th. This would actually be done as a code amendment to the new code once it's implemented. Would come at this stage around about September.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Davey.
Thanks, Your Worship. Is there an opportunity for other areas to be included in this? Because we've got certainly some very historic areas in Beulah Park, Hazelwood Park and Leabrook. The whole city of Burnside. Oh, so we'll do a review for the whole of all that. Thank you.
Right, I have no one else on the screen, so do you wish to speak again, Councillor Henschke?
Oh, I just hit my button.
Lemon.
If I may, sorry. Thank you for this motion. As you all know, I sit on CAT at the moment, and one of the things we looked at last week was the demolition of one of the last gentlemen's bungalows on Trevorton Avenue. There's one left now, so this was the second to last one. And what we looked at was a plan put in place to put two double-storey, hugely bulky items. And this was part of a heritage conservation zone and still is part of a heritage conservation zone. So I actually think this requires, I think this is a good start, but I think we need to go further than this because our existing heritage conservation zones don't seem to be stopping entirely inappropriate developments. And what we had last week was a house.
All those in favour? Carried. Highbury landfill, Councillor Cornish, moved. Seconded by Councillor Lemon. Those in favour? Carried. Nothing from Era Water, but there will be a review report to the next meeting. Nothing from Eastern Regional Alliance. We have a meeting next week, I think. Brownhill Creek, Stormwater, nothing, and the Mayor's report. Who would like to move the Mayor's report, or anyone who wishes to ask questions? Councillor Cornish. Moved, seconded by Councillor Henschke. Right, those in favour? Carried. Reports of members, delegates and working parties. Is there anyone who wishes to add something to what is already there on the screen? Councillor Hughes?
Yes, I attended the pump track opening and the relaunch of the town hall.
Right.
Can that please be added?
Yes,
because I forgot to email it through.
You did, thank you very much. It was good to see people there for both of those. Thank you. Anyone else? No, we don't have to move or second those ones. So now we move to the memorials. Number 17. I want to say valet and to pay respect to Mrs. Barbara Crompton. She was a City of Burnside councillor for Beaumont Ward from 1995 to 2003. She's also the mother of a former staff member, and some of you may know Andrew Crompton, who used to work with us, and he still is actually a biodiversity volunteer. She was the author of Burnside Then and Now, a celebration of 140 years of the City of Burnside. Her publication was actually on display at the reopening of the Town Hall last week. She was passionate about preserving Burnside's natural beauty. She was a member of the Burnside Historical Society, a committee member, wrote the newsletter for a period of years and was involved in the Oral History Project. She served on the Burnside Hospital Board and assisted with the publication of The History of Burnside Hospital, also a book that she produced. She was a school teacher and a teacher librarian. She did a lot of community work with Meals on Wheels, Community Aid Abroad, Neighbourhood Watch, and was a Botanic Gardens guide. And she was also involved in the Attunga Gardens back in the 1990s as part of the Friends of Attunga Gardens, and is referenced in current management plans for the garden. She has certainly provided an amazing service to the City of Burnside in her many different roles, so I wanted to recognise her contribution. Her funeral was held at St David's last Thursday, and there was a large contingent of people there to celebrate her life. Councillor Davey, you wish to add something as well?
Thank you. Yes, I'll happily second your memorial to Barbara Crompton. She was certainly a member of Burnside Council from 1995 to 2003. I thought she was for Kensington Park Ward because I took over from her in 2003.
Okay, well, I was given that information, which was Beaumont, so I'm not going to argue that. All we know is that she definitely was a ward councillor.
Absolutely, and everything else is absolutely spot on. She was a very committed environmentalist, loved our natural heritage and worked very hard to preserve and enhance that. And she was very dedicated to the preservation and maintenance of the Attunga Gardens attached to the Burnside Hospital. So yes, her family was very committed to Burnside. I think that she married into the long-standing Crompton family, and her children are, particularly her son Andrew, is a very committed member of the community. Thank you.
Councillor Carbone, you wish to add something?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to say a few words as well, if I
Need to put that to the vote. I moved it. Councillor Davies seconded it. Those in favour of the memorial? Thank you, carried. So now we're going back to the 6-month review. Is the first one? Was it here? That's been done. Okay, this one. Right, we're moving back to the 13.4. Sorry, and that was Councillor Davey, the helicopter landing facility.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Heinrich.
There is an amended motion up on which I'll read out. So this is regarding the helicopter landing facility on the Parade and Portrush Road. So I move that 1, the council notes the report, 2, that pursuant to section 46C 5A2 of the Development Act 1993 and Regulation 63D1 of the Development Regulations 2008, the City of Burnside provides a detailed submission to the Minister for Planning, the Honourable Stephen Knoll, and the Department of Planning, Transport and Infrastructure in respect of the Public Environment Report submitted by the Peregrine Corporation for a helicopter landing facility at 270 The Parade, Kensington. 2, that the submission address the following. Council's concern that the risks to public safety associated with proposed development are totally unacceptable and have not been addressed by the documentation provided by the applicant or the Department of Planning, Transport and Infrastructure. 4, Council considers that the multiple sites identified as emergency laydown areas across Burnside are surrounded by homes, aged care facilities, schools and public reserves in a densely populated area, and as such are therefore manifestly unsuitable areas for this purpose. The catastrophic failure of a helicopter taking off or landing at 270 The Parade presents an unacceptable risk to the safety of the residents, students and businesses who inhabit and use the areas of Beulah Park, Kensington Park and Kensington Gardens in particular during the daylight hours, that a helicopter would use the sites. And 5, that Council considers that a helicopter landing facility will have a significant adverse impact on the residential amenity for residents living in the adjacent suburb of Beulah Park in particular, and to the area more broadly due to the noise emanating from helicopters using a landing site at 270 The Parade, Kensington. So thank you to the staff for ensuring it's all legal and that I've got all the detail correct there. The background to this, as you may know, is that the Department of Planning, Transport and Infrastructure is considering an application to amend the existing approval for a 7-storey building on the corner of the Parade and Portrush Road to include approval for a helicopter landing facility schools. So the concern is that even 10 flights a year, which is what's proposed for this helicopter use, there's just no idea of how many a day, how many helicopter trips each day would be used in that 10 items or 10 episodes of use. Plus, there is a great deal of concern about the significance of a catastrophic failure, because if a failure, its use as emergency landing area would be for a catastrophic failure. And I think for Burnside, it would be significantly detrimental to our community. So I ask for your support that we register our concern to oppose this emergency landing site in Burnside. I just don't think it's appropriate that our ovals and open spaces can be potentially programmed to be potentially an emergency landing site. Thanks very much.
Seconder? Do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Piggott.
Hey, I'm happy to second this. I mean, I think what drives me that I think that we should put this position in is really, it is clearly from a resident point of view, it is a concern about the helicopters. From a noise and amenity point of view, Beulah Park obviously is quite near that location, and that's probably the main thing for me. The emergency landing, less of an issue probably. Certainly on a day where it was required, it would be a major issue. But I do think if everything else was okay, I think for the unlikely event of needing to go onto one of the school grounds, that could probably be worked out. But at the end of the day, I think the process is there to gain consultation with our residents effectively in regard to what our view is, and I think this does reflect the residents' view, and therefore it should be put by its council, their council, firmly back to the consultation. So I'm happy to second it.
Thank you for that. It is right across the road, for just in case those people who aren't aware. The church with the spire, with Hope's Cafe, is directly across the road. And I remember Councillor Davis and I tried to put a motion in the previous council in relation to supporting the Kensington and Ord Council's appeal against the development of the building. But the building is going ahead, that's no issue. The issue now is 2 helicopter pads on the roof of this building. And certainly I attended, as Councillor Davey did, that afternoon meeting, and so did Mr. Heinrich and Mr. Cant. So they heard the whole, all the events, all the discussion and all the presentations, and I'm very pleased that this particular motion's been put forward for debate. Councillor Hughes.
I'm happy to support the motion, I guess similar to Councillor Piggott. If there is an emergency, we want somewhere for people to be able to land safely. For me, the main concern is that people choose where they want to live for various reasons, and one of those is probably so that you're not next to an airport or you're not next to a helipad. And I think for something so significant to be placed so close to members of our community who may have bought there, 5, 10, 15 or more years ago before this development occurred, it's going to be quite distressing. And I know personally, Councillor Davey and myself have had a number of residents within our ward who are concerned about this and the impact that it will have on their local environment. And I think the restrictions of daylight hours, which apparently extend until 10 o'clock, no restrictions on the number of flights per day will have a significant impact on people living in the adjacent area, and that's why I'm happy to support the motion. I think one of the other things, there are a number of gaps that I see in the report personally, and I think one of them in there is we'll notify people within 24 hours before that day occurs. Well, how do you notify the whole community that this is going to happen? We live in a world, there are elderly people that might not be on social media, and I think I think, as I've said, to put something like this in a largely residential, and obviously there is some commercial space around there as well, will have a significant impact on our adjacent residents. I think we should certainly be putting in a submission.
Councillor Lemon.
Yes, I'm happy to support this also, but I too think we're looking at 2 things here. We're looking at the inconvenience and the more than inconvenience really of having a helicopter fly across those suburbs. I see that. And also what's going to happen if there's a catastrophic failure. I'm not so fussed about them landing on one of our ovals, and in fact I would prefer that they landed in an oval than on a school. So in that sense I think that's a separate issue. I think what we need to do is throw all our weight, if we can, behind opposing this completely. And it's not just the residents of Beulah Park either. When you look at where these helicopters are going to go, they're going to go from the top of that building to Tailem Bend. And in terms of metropolitan area, most of the flight path will be across Burnside. And I just think that's not good enough. And I would actually ask members to think back just a couple of weekends ago. I live in Glenunga, and I'm on the flight path of the jet that beats up the main straight at the Superloop. And when it came over, at the 500 feet that it comes over, it actually jumbles up I could feel my ribs. And I remember looking up at the sky thinking, I so feel sorry for those poor refugees that have come in from places like Syria, where having that happen is not a jolly good entertainment, it is terrifying. And I actually think helicopter, 10 days a year, is going to be equally terrifying. I just think that this is not an essential service. This is not at the top of a hospital. This is not the top of a news gathering station for the world. This is elective and very inconvenient for the people of Burnside, and I think we should throw everything at it to oppose it.
Councillor Dort.
Yeah, I was also equally scared when that plane came over to Erindale, so don't worry about Glenunga. Erindale was the same. It's paragraph 47. Magnus might be able to help me here. I see that Sonus, who must be a noise engineer, has said that when they land the helicopter on the 7th floor, that the noise is roughly equivalent to the passing of a big double truck on Portrush Road. I was surprised by that. Did anybody query that at the forum that you attended?
Through the chair, yes, and in fact that's almost a direct quote that was given at that forum. That was an answer to a question about, well, what does that sound like, and is it like a passing car? And the answer from Sonus was, well, it's more like a passing truck. I mean, you probably can't really get an absolute equivalent between a helicopter and a passing truck, but that was his answer on the day.
Yeah, I am surprised by that, because I'm sure that will be used to the government to say, well, this is why we should have a helicopter pad, because this group is saying it's not very noisy. Just a comment I'm making.
Following on immediately after that, there was a question asked by a lady who had bought into the apartment building across the road, the 5-storey apartment building, and she said, when I bought the unit here, I didn't know, first of all, I didn't actually know that there was going to be a 7-storey building across the road, but worse than that, she did not know that she'd be looking at a helicopter pad and seeing and probably feeling every vibration as it took off from the roof. So the quality of life has been already destroyed for her before it's even built. Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a planning question, Mayor. Through the Mayor, it's just that I'm just wondering, if we're thinking strategically, or our government and the planning department, they probably are, but I'm reading here, so the City of Melbourne, for example, strategically has planned and has regulated land use in their municipality to allow for developments with helipads, and obviously in the City of Melbourne it's quite dense, and looking 2050 and beyond, within a city zone development, what Adelaide's going to look density, more development. So the question is, with all that in mind, is there a strategic plan that says these are the places we can have helicopters, around where the hospital is, for example, and different parts of Adelaide? Because I'm just a bit confused as to why it's a bit sort of one-off. I'm sure there'd be more demand in the future for such high-end developments.
Through the chair, I think the short answer is no. The strategic planning for Adelaide in the longer term is about, I guess, reversing development trends, so reducing the amount of infill on the fringes and reversing that
the urban
ratio
sprawl
to 80% infill rather than 20% sprawl, rather than the other way around.
Right.
And the strategic planning is around how you cater for that in terms of transport systems, and there's a transport plan that goes with that. I don't think you'll find anything about helicopters, particularly in those documents, and in fact this is a proposal I don't think that necessarily fits with any state-sponsored strategic plan. It's a private application made for private purposes, so it sits largely outside, I think, of any strategic planning process.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have anyone else on the screen, so that...
Can I? Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Turnbull.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to know which airport, did they say what airport they're going to house these helicopters? Was it Parafield or Adelaide? Does anyone know?
Can I say that they talked about only leasing helicopters rather than using their own at the initial stages.
It wasn't mentioned at all. And I asked which airport in the whole report.
Through the chair, echoing the Mayor's comments, I don't think that the Peregrine Company is looking at owning these helicopters, rather leasing them or paying people to ferry people to and from. And as such, I'm not sure we know necessarily which airport they'll be based at, but certainly there was, in some of the documentation, reference to both Parafield and Adelaide as potential destinations in the event of an emergency. So I think we can assume that they'll come in from either, although I don't think this necessarily gives a clue, but the prevailing landing direction will be from the southwest.
Yes.
But I don't think that necessarily answers that question, though.
Thank you.
Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'll be voting in accordance with this motion as it stands. It is a residential zone, highly residential. This isn't the CBD. I don't think it's the right appropriate area for two helicopter landing pads, which incidentally, when you search in Google, are appearing already located at 270 The Parade, Kensington, on Google Maps. So I won't be supporting, will be supporting this motion, not supporting the helipads that Google says currently exist.
Councillor Hubel.
Look, I'm also in support of this. I don't think we should be doing anything to encourage a helipad in the area, and I think, you know, standing by and doing nothing is encouraging it, so I think we should be actively opposing this. Look, I don't expect anyone in the chamber to know the answer to this question, but an issue I wanted to float that also hasn't come up yet is, you know, we have, as the City of Burnside, declared a climate emergency, and I think a responsible behaviour in that part is to, not support, pursuits that are environmentally unfriendly. Now, I don't know the comparison between a helicopter versus a motor vehicle in transporting people, but I would venture to guess that a motor vehicle would be better for the environment in terms of carbon emissions as a whole. So I'm happy to be corrected if it is more environmentally friendly to charter a helicopter than a minivan, then so be it. But yeah, I definitely think we need to push back against this.
Right, I have no one on the screen, so Councillor Davey, do you wish to sum up?
I'll just sum up briefly, thanks, Your Worship. Thank you very much for all your comments. I'll just summarise by saying we all support the use of our skies across our suburbs for use by emergency services, SAPOL and the Medivac helicopters. There's no issue with this. We bear the risks of this air traffic for the good of the community, and we put up with any noise or interference. However, a helicopter landing site built in such a densely populated, largely residential area is a threat to the amenity of this population. I think it's also worth supporting the argument about the environmental undesirability of it on those grounds, but there's also the significant safety issues. And so I hope you'll support this. I understand Nord, Payneham and St Peters Council has considered this matter and passed a similar resolution. So hopefully you'll support this. Thank you.
Those against? Right, I think that was unanimous, and I would like that actually recorded, although we did make a discussion point that we would not necessarily include that, but I think it's important that we just mentioned that that was a unanimous decision, along with Nord, Payneham St Peters, whose also was unanimous. Right, now we move to 13.5, Councillor Piggott.
Thank you. I did put through a motion different from the recommendation. And if I could get that up, that would help me a lot. It would help. And I will read it for the benefit of the tape. That Council 1, receive and note the report. 2, support the initiative of community bus service to and from the Waterfall Gully car park. 3, that it right to state government, through the appropriate agency and minister, offering to provide the bus and manage such a service on its behalf, and seeking an amount of $60,000 to accommodate an initial 12-month trial period for the service. Number 4, review the trial after 6 months to determine patronage and effectiveness and inform future budget considerations, providing a copy of any evaluation to the state government. 5, as part of the request for financial support, seek formal approval from the state government for the bus service to access a temporary form of bus stop to be provided using the funds allocated in the Waterfall Gully car park for the duration of the trial period. And 6, write to the Honourable Vicky Chapman MP, member for Bragg, providing a copy of this resolution and the associated funding request. And if I could speak to that, we know this is an issue in regard to Waterfall Gully. It's a popular spot. Personally, I don't quite understand it, but people do like to go up there and go up the hill and then back down again for their weekly exercise. And we do know that it's probably, actually there's more people who would do it still if the parking wasn't such a problem. So we do know it is a problem. The problem's caused by an asset, being Waterfall Gully, which is owned by the government, and the issue is a big issue for the road that is also owned by the state government. But it is an issue for our own residents also who live along that road. So it is a problem, and we had a report where we could put in a bus service that could address that issue. And it's interesting, the survey did come up quite positively. It was interesting to see that people did feel quite warm to parking the car at the council and getting the bus up. I like the fact they were quite warm to paying for the service as well. I thought that was quite encouraging. So it may be a solution that could work. The problem I have is that it does come at a cost of $60,000, and I don't feel I can support that at this stage for a couple of reasons. One is that it's not just our problem. There should be a responsibility that the state government do play a part in solving this issue, or in a more positive way, providing a service that perhaps allows more people to go to Waterfall Gully. And second, I feel in the current budget run we are going to need to be pretty careful about the rate increase that we put out there for a number of reasons. The main one being that just the uncertainty in the world coming off the back of the coronavirus. And that virus, personally, I'm not too bothered about getting sick from it, but I am bothered about what it's going to do to the economy and what it does do to casual workers, to people losing their jobs, and et cetera, et cetera. That does really worry me. So I think as a council, I feel we should be looking at actually having a really almost headline low rate increase if we can arrange it. So the solution for mine, its timing is not great. I don't feel this council should be signing off $60,000 on a trial to this, but I do think that the service could be a solution to the problem. So from that side of things, what I'm proposing is that we've got a bus that we could throw into the mix, and I think we are prepared to, or should be prepared to run it, make sure it works. But we do need the government to fund it. And if we were able to achieve that, then I think that would give us 12 months to see whether people, when they were asked by Farley, the service, as to whether they would use it, whether they were telling the truth or not, and how many of them actually take it up, and whether it is something. It is a solution to the issue. So this is what this motion does. I like it as a way of fixing the problem, but I don't feel this council and this council's ratepayers should have to pick up the tab. So what I would like to do is try and facilitate the state government solving this problem and working with them to actually do a 12-month trial. So that is the gist of my motion, and I seek your support.
Councillor Lemon, you wish to second?
I do. I've been surprised by this motion. When I read the papers yesterday, I was thinking to myself, those poor people on Waterfall Gully Road will not have people parking across their driveways so that they can nip down to the shop for milk if they need to at some stage, if we get this bus going. But Councillor Piggott's actually pointed out to me something that hadn't occurred to me at that stage, and that is we as a council ought not be racing down North Terrace saying, cost shift to us, because essentially the original motion was in fact saying that very same thing. What we should be saying, and what we are going to be saying now, is go into partnership with us. It'll do us both good. It's your road. You're not actually prepared to fix it. But we won't talk about that right now. What we'll talk about is getting people up and down that road efficiently for a 12-month trial period. We're going to do all the grunt. You can give us the money. Beautiful, beautiful, clean way of doing it. And it shows a commitment from the state government if they can't do that. And $60,000 really is a drop in the ocean for the state government. They've got catering budgets that are actually more than that. So I would be very surprised if this didn't get a fair hearing, quite frankly. So thank you for bringing this. I'm very happy to be seconding this. Thank you.
Councillor David?
Disagree very much with Councillor Piggott and Councillor Lemon. I mean, it's quite easy to say it's somebody else's responsibility. And I think that what you should actually do, and I've gone and actually had a look at, and I'd encourage you all, is to think about not just Burnside. Burnside has a very introverted view of how we view the world. We have very defined borders, and I think that we would separate from Australia if we could. But in this case, what I think you should do is have a look at other councils and have a look at what they're doing. And have a look at, say, Kangaroo Island as a first example. One of their major visions, they have 3 points in their visions, and their first point in their vision is benefiting from a thriving economy based on strong tourism and primary production. If you have a look at Port Adelaide Enfield, they have a 45-page document which talks about their tourism action plan. And you might say, oh, Councillor Davis, well, there are tourism destinations, and apparently that's more important for a council, and that's not a state issue in Kangaroo Island, it's not a state issue in Port Adelaide Enfield. But then I'd suggest you have a look at Campbelltown, and have a look at what Campbelltown view, how they treat tourism and the impact that they make in tourism. And if you have a look on their website, and on their strategic plan, the Campbelltown Economic Development Plan, something that they're looking at driving business towards Campbelltown and supporting their local businesses. They say what council will consider: promote Campbelltown instructions, explore economic value of the natural environment through tourism, review buildings that could attract tourism, business and host other events. And they have a whole page there about what they're actually contributing to South Australia's tourism. And I think, and if you have a look at what Unley's doing in terms of their French festival and trying to drive tourism in their councils. And I think it's very easy for us to sit in Burnside and say, oh, well, we don't have any business in Burnside. We don't have any tourism here. We don't have any, we have a shopping centre, the Burnside Village, and that's about it in terms of our commerce. And what I'm saying to you is that that's your fault. That's this council's fault, is because this council has always been non-receptive to anything that would actually encourage people to come to our city. We, as a council, I think, often want people to leave. And I think what you should, and that's become probably an Adelaide mentality, is if you have a visitor from Melbourne and they come and they ask you and say, hey, I'm coming to Adelaide, what should I do? Adelaideans will say, you should leave. Have you been to the Barossa? Have you been to Harndorf? Have you been to McLaren Vale? Go, what about Kangaroo Island? You should leave Adelaide. Don't come here. Land here and then go somewhere else. And I met a client in Melbourne when I was over there. And I met him for breakfast and I said, this is something I'd love, this is something that I'd like to do and I think that Burnside should do. And he said, that would be amazing. I'd love to come to Burnside. I'd love to come to Adelaide and go, what can I do in Burnside? What can I do in Adelaide, in the SA region? And you could say, well, now you could say to your friends, why don't you go and take a walk up Mount Lofty? I would never ever recommend that to anybody because it's such a nightmare to park every single morning. It is chaos, and if you have a look at the survey that we've done, there are never any parks, and it's a complete nightmare in terms of trying to get up there. What we can do, and I think that there are ways that we could possibly facilitate 15,000 people if we had 3 trips an hour. That's my view. And Farley and I met with the manager of the Feathers, and we're looking at a possibility that one of the bus stops could leave from one of their car parks, in which case I think that we could have a half an hour, at least a 20-minute turnaround, which would actually push 15,000 people and bring them to our suburb and bring them to Burnside. And then councillors around here wouldn't be saying, oh, well, what's our only business? It's only the Burnside Village. Oh, well, we don't really have anything to do with tourism. We could actually get involved. And if you have a look at what the Adelaide Hills do, it's huge. And what do? We do absolutely nothing. We don't do the Tour Down Under. We don't have a fete. We don't promote any kind of activity which would drive people here. We want them to go away. Burnside is shut for business. And that's what this council, I think, says time and time again. Now, you might say, well, who's responsible for tourism? Oh, it's obviously the federal government, isn't it? So the federal government is responsible for tourism. Oh, well, maybe South Australian government is responsible for tourism. Well, maybe it's just local business owners who are responsible for tourism, or actually, promoting economic development. And Councillor Piggott talked about, we have dark economic times ahead. Which government ever in the history of, there's probably a few and they probably went bankrupt, ever said in dark economic times we should cut spending? No, they say during times of things where we are under threat, we should expand our spending, we should encourage tourism here, we should make ourselves a good destination. And I am, I suppose, sick and tired of Burnside always being the insular state and trying to keep everybody out. I think that's disappointing. And I think Councillor Piggott's motion will probably get up. I understand his concern, but I am disappointed that we won't be proceeding. And I think that this will kill the motion. I think the state government will take months and months to respond, and they'll probably come back and say something like they'll consider it later, because what we're asking for is really $30,000. And I'm disappointed that that's the way that it's going to go.
Thank you. Councillor Davey.
Thanks, Your Worship. I couldn't disagree more. I think in Burnside, if we talk about tourism, look at our swimming pool, 110,000 patrons per annum. Our library, the best one in Adelaide that we understand. Wombat Waterhole in Hazelwood Park, that people come from all over Adelaide. Well, they have in the past. I don't know if they still do. There might be some better playgrounds in the Adelaide Parklands. Our parks and reserves, people come from all over the place to visit those. Michael Perry Reserve, I was there on the weekend. It is absolutely beautiful. We have revegetated it and it is the most stunning area. Penfolds Winery, that's just a few of our tourism sites that people come through and are targets in Burnside. So while I acknowledge my colleagues' comments, Waterfall Gully is a special case. It's constrained by its particular geography, its location, its residential development, and the actual Darn Road that we know has had so many problems over the years. It's prone to flooding. I mean, we've had some really dramatic flooding episodes there. It's a really special area. So I think we need to appeal to the state government to help us out. And I think this is a great proposition to at least trial. A lot of work's gone into this, working through it, and I think we should give it a go. Whether we, use the base at the Civic Centre here or at the Feathers Hotel, which isn't probably a bad idea, I think we should give it a go. So I support the motion.
Councillor Hugh.
Yeah, there's some very good points being made very well by everybody. I don't think I've actually disagreed with anything anyone has said. I would like to go a bit harder, so I have an amendment to this. I'd like to add on to Councillor Piggott your point 3 and add on to point 3 as part of this, so after a period for the service, so after that new sentence, as part of this request, include the following considerations, but not, I might need some help with the wording here, highlighting but not limited to. A, the shared responsibility that the City of Burnside and the state government have for Waterfall Gully Road.
We don't have responsibility for the road at all, I don't think. I think we need to be careful about that.
Okay, I'm referring to the fact that we have the verge, they have the road itself, so I'm very happy to shared responsibility that we have for Waterfall Gully Road in a holistic sense. Mm. Mm.
Well, we could say something like the Waterfall Gully environment surrounds or something without mentioning the road.
That sums up what I'm trying to say. Yeah, thank you for your help, Councillor Lemon. Environs.
Gully environment and surroundings.
Environment.
Get rid of the road.
Access and environment.
Yeah.
Waterfall Gully environment. Get rid of the word road.
Councillor Pickett, is this going to destroy, or is this consistent? Are you happy with this?
It is consistent. I think it's appropriate that it's an amendment rather than a variation, because I think, there's accidentally to it. I think Councillor Hughes should get credit for it. So that's what we're asking.
Well, I just want to know if you're willing to accept it as just an alteration to it, because it's not a major change.
I think it should be an amendment.
Okay.
So yeah, as part of this request include the following considerations, highlighting but not limited to the shared responsibility that the City of Burnside and State Government have for Waterfall Gully environment and surroundings, the tourism benefits for the state that improved access to the Mount Lofty hike would provide, the nature of the road being that it is the only serviced road to state government land that is managed by National Parks and Wildlife Services, the patronage...
So can you say somewhere that it is the only state government road, state government serviced road? Well, it's not really serviced even because they don't.
No, well,
Should we mention that it's a state government road there?
it's the only road.
Okay.
Just want to put a T in state.
T in state.
In C.
The nature of the road being the only access to state government land.
It's not, because you can access from the top, from Mount Lofty. Really access. Well, you can vehicular access to the beginning of the hike on the top of Mount Lofty and walk down, in the same way as you can drive your car up to Waterfall Gully, near the kiosk and find a park if you're lucky, and then go up. Difference is one way.
I'll take the point, I might just leave that one there. D, the patronage of the park by residents from a range of council areas, and the safety concerns associated with improper use of the road by vehicles and pedestrians. Now, speaking to adding these in, I think that this entire road is a real mess. Well, the whole access to Waterfall Gully, there's some major problems being suffered by the residents of Waterfall Gully Road. Part of that is inherent with the location, but I think there's a lot of things, including the congestion caused by poor access, that we do have control over and is out of the hands of the residents. I think the state government needs to come to the party on this. I think that we obviously have a role to play in initiating this. Look, the tourism has been mentioned by Councillor Davis. I think we're getting people into our council area is only going to be a good thing. I think, showing off, more than just Waterfall Gully, but our entire Hills Face Zone hiking tracks is a good thing. And look, there are council areas in Adelaide that, do work for people outside the residential area. We've got beachside councils that do an incredible amount of work. And I know I go to the beach, but I'm not a resident of Holdfast. Look, and I go to Morialta with my kids, and I'm not a resident of Campbelltown. So I think there is a certain obligation for us to provide solutions here, but I do think that there are a lot of reasons why I think the state government really needs to start taking this issue seriously. I've been, walking up and around there for many, many years, and it's just only getting more and more popular. To be truthful, I think Instagram had a lot to do with it. They say that, if you don't Instagram yourself at the top of Mount Lofty, did you really go? But I think the answer is yes. You know, there's just an incredible amount of people wanting to access, you know, the Mount Lofty hike, and if they can't do it from Waterfall Gully car park, they're doing it from Chambers Gully. I think that you know, moving forward when this trial happens, I think we need to have a drop off at Chambers Gully, because I think a lot of people want to access the walks through there as well. And I just think we've got people walking off the footpaths. Look, if we won the lottery, there's a lot of things we could do by blasting rock faces and, you know, widening the road, and there could be some compulsory acquisitions of property to make safe footpaths the whole way up. And I don't think we want to be going down that road. I don't think we, you know, pardon the pun. I think it's a hard situation, and I think, you know, a bus is a very good compromise. It's midway. And I agree with Councillor Piggott that we shouldn't be saying, yep, we'll pay for it. We should be saying, hey, this is something we want you, here's a solution, help us get there. So I think, you know, I guess speaking specifically to what I've added, those 5 points, I really do want to hammer home that this isn't just our problem, but it is something we are going to be part of the solution with. So I hope to get your support in strengthening this.
Councillor Hughes, are you wishing to second the amendment?
I would love to second the amendment.
All right.
I will speak very briefly. I think most of the points have already been covered off. I think it's, you know, as has already been mentioned, this is a fair compromise. As a parent, I'm always looking for a good compromise. So I think to make our starting point to seek some funding to make this happen is probably a good thing. I think Councillor Davis's comment that we're shutting people out of the city of Burnside is perhaps unfair. I think if we were doing that, the motion wouldn't be this. It would be we're not having a bus to go up there. I think this is, and we are. This is an incremental step. And as much as I for one get frustrated with local government and how slow processes move, having sat here for this long, but I think we have to do what's right for our residents, and I think this is a fair compromise. And you know what, if we don't hear back in the next 6 months, I will happily put up a motion that we consider funding it and see whether that floats. But I think we need to start with this. I think Councillor Hubel has covered off on some great points. It's about demonstrating that we have a responsibility. Well, the state government also has a responsibility for the area, and we should be making that point to them and see what they come back with. So I think this is a great start.
Councillor Turnbull, you wish to speak to the amendment?
I think I was next, but...
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was actually...
Your name jumped up before while I was looking at...
That's okay. I actually want
Apologies.
to ask a question and speak to the motion, not the amendment, so I will relinquish.
Okay. Now it's Councillor Turnbull.
So I'd support the motion. I agree with what Councillor Hughes says, but I'd like to know perhaps what's the breakdown of 60,000? Why the term 60,000? Could it be done for cheaper?
In your report, you'll notice I've got a quick breakdown under finance. So you've got $45,000, which includes a contracted bus driver. So that's using our own bus, a 19-seater coaster. It's a contractor for 5 hours, both Saturday and Sunday. $10,000 for modest bus stop infrastructure, so it's furniture, signage to be implemented, and $5,000 for marketing, communication and branding.
Now, the wages for the bus driver, could they be offset by charging people? I'm sure people wouldn't mind. It may not be a lot of money, but a couple of gold coin donation type of things, and that goes towards the wages. That could perhaps decrease things. Perhaps for the 6-month trial, and then make decisions after that, because it's going to take a while to go to the state government and get them to come to the party.
Yep. Through the Mayor, that's correct. So it was quite a high percentage. That was 93% of people surveyed on site said that they would be happy to pay a gold coin donation. I think it's important just to note that with our insurance excess, if we charge, there's an additional $2,000 on our excess, but if it's a donation, there's no change to our insurance excess.
Right. So donations it is, perhaps. So if that went for the 6-month trial, then after that, think about it and work, because that'll be part of the financial implications if people are donating. won't it?
Correct.
Right. Right, thank you.
Councillor Dawes, you're going to talk to the amendment?
It's Councillor Henschke.
Sorry, it's Councillor Henschke. I've done it again. It skips up. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank
Councillor
you.
Henschke.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a question, Mayor. It's paragraph number 30. There's a sentence there that says, of particular interest is an option to potentially partner with a department and expand a bus service to incorporate additional stops at Cleveland Wildlife Park and Mount Lofty Summit. So my question is, to clarify this option, how does this option relate to this proposed motion here? I'm just a bit, the amendment, I'm a bit confused. Can I get some clarification? Because there's been some engagement here with the Department of Environment and they're talking about some other ideas and I'm wondering, are there more ideas that we need to develop before we decide to execute this project this way? Thank you.
There was a couple of proposals that I've discussed with the Department of Environment and Water.
Yep.
So it's on, you could do a similar loop. So you could sort of do Mount Lofty, Cleveland and Waterfall Gully. So I was looking at opportunities to partner.
Yes.
So with trying to seek additional funding. So I guess a collaboration of what might benefit both sides. So it was just an idea that we proposed.
Yeah.
Haven't really had any further conversations. Obviously, the department's been quite preoccupied with bushfire recovery, but it's just an idea that we've put forward that could possibly work. And I feel that the motion that you've got up there would actually address that, and we could propose those ideas again.
Oh, okay. So yes, because at the previous meeting about this topic, I think I wanted to push for all partnerships and exploring ideas. So that's what you've uncovered there, which is great. And so this motion won't stop us continuing developing the project ideas.
Through the mayor, no, I don't see. It's just an option. It's just an idea that we've put up to the department.
Right. Okay. And the other question was, I want to know, Mayor, does this also, it just feels like the ball's in our court a bit too much. It's a park. I've been to Cradle Mountain and, the parks run a bus service and it's wonderful and you can just catch a bus and it loops around. You keep, hop on, hop off thing, like a beeline bus sort of thing. But this just doesn't seem quite the same. Am I just getting, can you just clarify that for me? That we're not going to be left with the baby in the bathwater at the end of 12 months and they're going to wash their hands clean because I've said, we've given you some money and that was all we're going to do. I'd just like some assurance. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor,
Yep.
and just excuse me let me know if I don't answer your question
Thank
properly. My understanding is, so we'll approach the government and perfect world, assume they provide us with the funds. We'll conduct the trial. Midway through the trial, we'll gain a lot of data and understanding of how effective the trial is, whether it's achieving its goals. The funding would see us out till the end of the financial year or the 12 months. And at that point, I then think there'll be an opportunity for the government to either recommit, and based on that decision, it would then come back to council for a decision whether council chose to continue that service or not. And likewise, with regards to the current alternate motion that's before us, obviously if the government says no, that would trigger the administration to bring a report back for council to reconsider this item in the light of self-funding.
Okay, and then my last question was about, thank you for that, was about service. So we're essentially providing a bus service, and through the Mayor, my question is, if we provide this service and then we stop this service, how do we manage the risk of dissatisfaction with our people? Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think what will be very important here is the messaging to our community, for them to understand that this isn't a new service that's being introduced from day one. So in every bit of media and promotion on this, it will have to be very clearly articulated as a trial. And we need to just reinforce that every conversation we get, so that, should it not proceed, that we don't end up with, as you're alluding to, the community accusing us of withdrawing a service. It is a risk. I think it's a smaller risk, a lower end risk, but I think we can counter that with effective messaging.
And just lastly, the question about business engagement. We have a policy for engaging with businesses, and I've heard tonight Councillor Davis refer to he's engaged himself with one business, and I was just curious about how we engage with all the businesses in a procurement, approach.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think in terms of this exercise, we've certainly had communication with businesses along the route, and for example with the cafes and Utopia in particular. It wasn't really an issue about a procurement conversation. The conversation with Feathers was more about the use of their car park and whether they were amenable to us using it as a site. And the ball was in their court to say yes or no to us. It wasn't about a procurement conversation with the business. Does that clarify?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. Well, that's great. Thank you for answering all those questions, because I think it's it's wonderful. Like I said, I was at Cradle Mountain. It's nothing like getting on a hop-off bus and then going for a lovely walk. And I see this as being a really wonderful initiative, and I just want to see it developed, thoroughly, and so we maximise our opportunities, benefits of tourism, and benefits for our residents and ratepayers. So I'm glad that the motion and all the amendments have flowed this way. So I will support this. Thank you.
Councillor Dawes.
Thank you, Mayor. I thought it was one of the better motions from Councillor Pickett, so I congratulate him. And I think it has been further improved by Councillor Hubel. Today, I was trying to think. Look, there were a lot of budget bids. We had a workshop last Thursday. Not all councillors could attend, and there are 7 operating projects that have not yet been decided upon. An amount of 450,000. So I was thinking, how can we overcome that? I thought I might use Councillor Jones's idea of an adjournment, because I just thought it should be discussed at the same time as the other budget bids, because I do take Councillor Pickett's point that this year is a tight year for reasons that we all understand. So priorities are the key here. I think that what Councillor Pickett has done with the help of Councillor Hubel's amendment is try and find a way forward and still support what Councillor Davis would like to do. I know he'd like to do it yesterday, and we're saying let's try and do it tomorrow. But there are a lot of things there that we can pick up on. I noticed that 14% were Burnside residents, for instance, and I asked Farley tonight how many would attend our pool, and the last time was some time ago. It was 70%. Barry thought it was 60%, but it was a huge amount. So I do believe that we do have a shared responsibility, but not the only responsibility. And I think that's the main point that I'm trying to put forward. But in the context of our budget at the moment, I think this is the best motion going forward. I also support what Councillor Turnbull is saying, that there should be some sort of a donation or whatever from those who are using the service. We do help with community buses with the elderly and so forth for no cost, but this is not the same scenario. So they're my thoughts. Thank you.
Councillor Piggott, you have a question?
You had a couple, if I could. One was on the. Could I just understand the insurance issue around charging? Our excess increases on this is for the bus. We're insuring the bus, and if we've got paying customers on there, the excess, if they have a bingo, will be more than if they're all donations. Is that? They're all free. Is that how that works?
Through you, Madam Mayor. That's correct. That's correct. So I think our excess is currently $500. So there's a $1,500 premium placed on our excess if we have charging customers on board.
Gee. Okay. Fair enough. Does it affect the way the driver operates? That's I've never come across that. Fair enough. It's a big chunk. Although I have to say, I think it is important that, and I haven't got it in the motion, and I might regret that, but I think if the trial does start, I think it is important that we do I'd put a $2 charge on it, not a donation, a $2 charge, and make sure the guy doesn't crash the bus, because you know, I think it is a way of funding it in part, and it's nothing to people in actual fact. So, and my second one, I just wanted to clarify around the number of people, not that I feel actually it's that hugely relevant in terms of the number of Burnside residents, but you did answer me today, I'm sorry, but could you just clarify, there was the Campbelltown and Burnside and Norwood, whoever it was, only added up to about 50 anyway. It didn't add up to 100. And I know I'm sad that I add them up to see if it does, but where are all the rest?
Through the Mayor, yes, so it was 14% Burnside,
Yep.
and then it was 13% from Unley and 11% from Adelaide City and 10%
38.
from Campbelltown. The
Right.
remaining 52% are from everywhere. So all other suburbs ranging from Windvale to Lewiston.
So not Burnside?
No, just...
It's not they didn't answer, they were just everywhere else?
Yep.
All right. Citizens of the world.
Yes.
Right.
Some international.
Thank you, that clarifies that. Thank you.
I don't have anyone else on the screen, and there's only Councillor Cornish and Councillor Carbone who haven't spoken.
I'm waiting for the motion.
You're waiting for the
not
motion?
The amendment.
No, okay, so you're waiting for the original motion.
Ask a question?
Sorry?
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Can we use some technology to tap and go kind of thing to get data from all the users in this trial? Just thinking.
Can we get Farley to answer the question, please, or one of the administration?
Through Madam Mayor, certainly if it goes ahead, we'll be exploring the most effective and efficient ways of gathering data, and some of it will be, and obviously the more automated and electronic we can do it, the better. So we'll pursue all means to gain different data.
Councillor Carbone, you wish to ask a question or enter the debate on the amendment?
I'll enter the debate. I don't want to be the only one not saying anything. And I wasn't going to, because it's all straightforward and common sense to me, but I will ask something because now I feel obligated to. Now we're going to have a captured market for 10 minutes times 2. And so you can probably see where we're going with this. Now, I've been on the bus once when we did that little drive around when we first got elected. I haven't been on a bus since, of course. And we do use them, of course, for other residents and so forth. Has there been ever any thought to having TV screens on these buses and so forth with ads running? So we talk about, you know, promoting tourism and the pool and the parks and so forth, you know, and given that most people are a tourist because they're not from around here, they're from Windvale and Lewiston and so forth, so tapping into this whole tourism argument, would it be a good idea, as a side issue to all this, to have some sort of TV screens and so forth on these buses, so when we've got a captured market and they can't look anywhere else, to promote what we're doing in the city and so forth, and you know, and it could also be little things like council rates are now due to, you know, add to the flyers and so forth, but also the nice things like, you know, have you been to the pool lately? Have you been to our new toy library lately? All those sorts of things to tap into. So that's my answer. I'll finish now. That's my question.
That was your answer. Through Madam Mayor, I really like the concept and the idea, and I'd certainly like to explore how we could do that. I particularly like the idea of blatant promotion of other aspects of Burnside that people might like to explore. So certainly we'll look at that one. Thank you.
Councillor Turnbull, you wish to ask a question?
That's just a question, please. Can I just ask the question, why the survey finished at 3 p.m? Because in daylight saving hours, people walk up there quite late. They like to do the evening one. Not being a walker, but my husband says you can't get a park up there in the evening either.
Through the Mayor, we finished it. We found that most people actually petered off during that time, so they packed up and came home. There's a graph on your paper under 20. You'll notice that there was significant times in the morning, and then by the afternoon most people went home. We didn't have a big demand in the afternoon.
So when did you actually do that survey? What month?
It was in February. 2 weekends in February.
Councillor Lemon.
Yes, I have a question of you, Mayor. You're on a tourist bus. Yes. Would you rather be looking at a screen or out the window?
Now, question now goes back to Councillor Hubel. Do you wish to speak? Oh, no, he doesn't speak again on right, I'm sorry, I can put the amendment. In favour of the amendment, please raise your hands. Those against? There's no one against, so it's carried. Now, the amendment motion. And now, Councillor Cornish, you wish to speak.
I've got a question first. One question's already been answered by the CEO, so thank you for that. The second question, would there be any grant programs available from the state or federal government that would help us with this $60,000? Do you know?
I've inquired regarding grants. I spoke to the Office of Rec and Sport, and unfortunately the way that the bus service is at the moment unfortunately didn't fall into a grant category, but possibly there was discussions around a review, and in the future there might be an option. I've also looked at tourism. They're yet to get back to me, unfortunately.
Thank you for that. I'll now speak to the motion if I can. I won't vote for the motion as it currently stands. I know that the 2021 state budget is all the submissions from all the agencies were put in before Valentine's Day. Round 1 with the Treasurer has just been completing this week. And I think we're a bit late for the party. So if we actually want to get 60 grand out of the state government, this is going to be an 18-month wait before we get that sort of money. I think this is a bit of a delay tactic. I actually think that we should be looking at it from a different point of view. We should be actually putting it into our budget. I know it's a risk and money's tight, but if we could actually show the state government that there is decent patronage on a bus service at this end of a line, they might actually be able to divert the 143, which goes through our suburbs, pretty much goes up Glenburn Road up there. Wouldn't take much for them to pick up a lot more passengers along the way and just go up Waterfall Gully Road and drop those new passengers off, and they'll make a mozza. You know, Adelaide Metro would make a lot more money from that line than they currently are, because they're dropping people off through our suburbs and picking them up to drop them off at that destination. So it's sort of like a back end from the city to Waterfall Gully. So I actually think that would probably be a good idea, but you can only do that and sell that to the state government if you've got the data of how successful a bus line would be. And I think we should be getting on and doing that as quickly as we possibly can. So I actually think the original motion or something, a variant thereof, to actually get the service happening next year would probably be a lot better than we do. Councillor Hubel talked about, beaches and beach councils. I've got to tell you, Councillor Hubel, all of those councils along the beaches charge differential rates for their businesses, because businesses getting tourism into the area, businesses make a bit more of a mozza, and therefore they pay higher rates. We're one of the only metro councils in Adelaide that refuses to bring a differential rate for businesses, so we can't sort out parking issues in certain suburbs by buying land and putting in council-owned car parks like the Adelaide City Council does. We can't do a lot of things to help our businesses and bring in more tourist dollars and more people to the area to help our businesses with more patronage there. So I'm certainly of the view that we need to trial this ourselves first. get some runs on the board, then we go to state government and say, hey, we've got this great service with all these people using it, you can make a mozza, why don't you come to the party? So I'm more than happy to vote for the original motion rather than this one, and that's where I stand. Thank you.
Councillor Davis?
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
How many people in a year on average would use the service?
Through the Mayor, where's my data?
37.9.
Thank you. We've got 9,800 people per year. That's if it's completely full.
And if...
That's not what he asked.
Yeah,
Sorry?
that's what I asked.
How many would use it, did you say?
No, that's what I asked. She answered the question.
Okay.
And if they each donated, well, paid $2 for that service, how much money would we raise from that?
From my spreadsheet?
Through the chair, you're going to make me too close to $20,000.
You can round it off to 10 grand if you want.
Thank you. It's close to $20,000.
So, and if a bus, so my understanding is that the cost comprises of 3 elements. The bus driver of 45,000, which includes depreciation. A bus stop, which is a capital investment of 10 grand, and 5 grand for advertising. So in terms of depreciation and costs, that would be 45,000 less 25,000. How much would it cost Burnside's operational budget every year? 45 less 20,000.
Through the chair, you've got approximately 20,000.
Okay, so to our operational budget, this service would cost 25,000. Thank you.
Can I just clarify? The 9,800, is that 9,800 up there and then back again? Or is it 5 one way and 5 back?
Through the Mayor, that's like taking up and bringing back.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I just want to provide a little thought that I'm having about the approach we would make to the state government around this funding. I think there's an opportunity right now with regard to the federal and the state by flow-on about the need to stimulate our economies at this point in time. And I think that might be the lever that we pull on to get an out-of-round funding. That's my assumption at this point in time, but it's something I'd like to explore if this was to go ahead. Thank you.
Councillor Hughes?
I just have a question for the CEO. In terms of timing then, how long do you see that process potentially taking?
Through Madam Mayor, yes, it will be my crystal ball. My feeling is we'll make a direct approach to Vicky Chapman, as well as making a formal approach into the Premier and the relevant department. But I'd like to think this is a matter, I don't know, I'd like to think within 2 months, because if the government is serious about generating immediate stimulus to the economy, and they think this will do that, they're proven that they are acting very quickly around this current issue we've got. So, what it's worth, that's where my head's at. Thank you.
Councillor Lemon, you have a question?
Yes, I do, and it follows on from what you were just talking about. As this debate has been going on, I've been thinking which government department would you go to, because I actually think it covers more than one. It's not just about transport. You talked about going to the Premier. Is that because he is now Minister for Tourism? You talk about going to Environment and Heritage. That's because they're after trails. You could go to Planning because they actually run transport services. You know, like, or do we go to all of them and ask them all for 15 grand? I mean, you know, where do we go? And Vicky Chapman doesn't run any departments that are actually remotely connected with any of this.
Through Madam Mayor, so Vicky Chapman would be a matter of courtesy. My thought is that our primary approach should be to the Premier, and it's in light of the fact of the state's need for economic stimulus. It helps that the Premier is also looking after tourism at the minute, and so they're the 2 avenues I'd be looking to pull heavily on. That's my thought.
Yeah, thank you. Question, thank you. This project, have we got benefits and costs that we can lay out, costs and benefits dollar-wise, and also costs to the environment, all of these factors? I'm asking, will it all be put together in a package when you engage?
Through Madam Mayor, in our approach to government, we'll be talking about the many aspects of the project. If I can just talk about environmental impact as a risk. In actual fact, this initiative could lessen the impact on the environment. So it's actually probably a net positive for the environment. But we will have to present the government with a short business case to justify this.
Good.
So yes, it will be itemised and the various components pulled out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, because it seems like we're trying to put it all together up here in this motion, but I feel reassured. Thank you.
Councillor Piggott, do you wish to sum up?
I do. My learned colleague here is telling me that as a result of the maths he's just done in his head, as opposed to on the back of an envelope,
paper.
that I should tell you that we shouldn't vote for this. We should actually go back to the original one and all charge them $2, I think. So, and while that has merit, it does rely on every bus being full every time for the entire 52 weeks. So we might discount that for a minute. And I think before that, he did us a bit of a disservice. I do feel it is totally unfair to say that Burnside's closed for business and that we want to send everybody out. That's actually not true. If I had someone who wanted to go for a walk when they come and visit me in Adelaide, there's all sorts of possibilities in Burnside without having to go up to Waterfall Gully. You know, nice walk around Kensington Gardens, perhaps have a coffee at Arundel Shopping Centre. John and Main Street in Eastwood, that'd be quite a nice walk, actually.
Is that what
Very nice walk. Something that's, is relatively level as opposed to ridiculously sloped, I think would be much more preferable to me and my guests in reality. So I don't think that is fair. In terms of dark economic times, I am worried about this year. We are not in a position of being able to pull levers and spend money and make things happen. But we are in a position to be mindful of our residents who may be struggling a bit more than normal because of what's going on. So I think in that point it's not the time for adventurous, potentially risky, albeit worthy projects like this one, which is not our central responsibility. I never argued the fact that it was, I'm surprised it's only 14% people from the city of Burnside, but it doesn't bother me particularly. I don't think that's the reason why we shouldn't be doing it. The reason we shouldn't be doing it is that we don't have the money right now, and second is that it's not just our responsibility. And what we're doing here really is facilitating the people who is responsibility to actually do it and fall in with us and do it. So now, yes, they could say no, they could not respond to us, they could do all sorts of things. It's by no means in the bag. It certainly delays the process, that's certainly true. However, it is appropriate that the government does kick into doing this. It's primarily their responsibility. And what this does is take all the hassle off their hands. They write a cheque out. We tell them at the end of 12 months whether it worked and what happens thereafter. So, I don't think I think it's a very sensible way of going. And from that point of view, it's really, this council responsibly should be doing this and not throwing our money at largely somebody else's problem. So I think this is a good motion and I seek your support on it.
Those in favour? Those against? Carried.
Thanks, Your Worship. I have a couple of questions first, if I may. I'm just not clear in the definitions. It's not its definitions. It's what actually branding is and comprises, because there isn't in the policy. There's no definition of it. So I just would like some clarification on what branding is, please.
Through your Mayor, branding is defined as endowing products and services, so the power of the brand. So branding is an identity of an organisation.
Thanks. The other issue, through you, Your Worship, is what are contra services? I might sound a bit dumb, but I don't know what contra services.
Through the Mayor,
or
contra
opportunities
services.
are.
Sorry, beg my pardon. Contra services are examples such as catering, printing, or a possible use of a facilitator.
So is that provided by someone, by us, or someone who's? That's I don't understand the nexus.
Okay, so contra, if you've got a contra agreement and the agreement possibly could be contra services, you've got I guess a partnership or an agreement where an organisation might do the printing for you, or you might have an agreement where they facilitate a service for you. So you've it's almost like an in-kind agreement.
Through Madam Mayor, I'm just trying to find another way to try and explain that. In my language, I'd say if someone provides you an in-kind service, so instead of paying you cash for it, so you might have a community group that we're going to use their labour in kind and not charge that to the project in cash, but they would say we're going to donate our time. That would be a contra or an in-kind. Does that make sense?
Thank you. And who decides on that in terms of this policy?
Farley will correct me if I'm wrong here. Through Madam Mayor, when the community groups or the groups put forward their submission, they will have in their breakdown of their project the components that are covered they're requesting the cash for. Also, they have the total project broken down, and then they'll say X amount of in cash and Y in kind or contra makes up the total project cost. So the proponent or the person requesting will usually stipulate that to us.
Thanks. And one final question. That'll all be recorded systematically.
Through Madam Mayor, that'll be part of their submission and it will be captured in our record system.
Thanks very much. I'm happy to move in accordance with the officer's recommendation. Thanks.
Are you wishing to second it?
Yes, and I have a question. Sometimes I always raise awareness of these grants and things, whoever I'm meeting, and I met the other day with the Reverend from Gartrell Church, because I'm on the Anzac Day committee there, and I said, "And are you aware that there are community grants?" And she said, "No, I'm not." So anyway, that's what I do every now and then. But I'm just wondering, can we? I'm sure we do raise awareness, but is there such a thing? Do we have a community awareness and participation plan to understand? There are church groups, there are scout groups, and let's identify them, and let's all engage with them about these grants and what they can do just to get them up. Thank you.
Through the Mayor, when our grants are released, they are forwarded out by email to most of our community networks that we have. They're released on the website, they're released on social media. We actually send a personal letter to all previous grant people or groups who have submitted grants.
Oh, okay.
So we use our network quite strongly.
Mm-hmm. So do we have that's the plan, we just follow that approach?
Through the Mayor, we also use our community engagement team, and they also use their engagement processes to spread the word. Mm-hmm. And they close very soon too.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lem.
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you very much for this, and I'd particularly draw people's attention to after page 486, where you've got the draft community funding sponsorship and donation guidelines, where a whole heap of what had become really complicated policy documents and guidelines has been pulled together in something that's easy to understand, decent sized font, so it's easy to read as well. And I actually think, following on from what Councillor Henschke was saying, pretty easy for people to follow in terms of what's required of them. So I'd just like to thank you for doing that, and you and your team for doing that, because I just think that we had a group of disparate policies that didn't hang together terribly well, and what you've done is you've put it together in this one guideline, and it's excellent, so thank you.
I'd like to just piggyback on that too, in particular on page 19 of that guideline, the fact that we will now actually have specific criteria for the committee to evaluate applications. That is going to be very, very helpful for us in the future. It has been something that's always concerned me over time, and I've been on that grants committee for a lot of years, so this I thought was really amazing, and I congratulate you on that page alone. So thank you. I don't have anyone else who wishes to speak at this point, so I'm happy for it to go back to Councillor Davey. All right, so I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. I now need a motion to go into confidence. Councillor Davey, you're moving to move into confidence. Seconded by Councillor Hughes. Thank you, Councillor Hughes. And we're moving to 19.1 on page